So the scripture this morning, Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 through 21. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys or where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Last night, or actually yesterday morning, when I got done writing the sermon, I got online and I wrote down that I had written an outrageous sermon. But then I also had to sit back and think about it, and I was like, an outrageous sermon for me might not be that outrageous for a lot of you all. And we're still following the theme of heaven. We're talking about heaven. But this week, something funny happened in the news. There was this big mess with Wall Street that happened. Now, what happened was this. A lot of times, hedge funds will bet against a company and say, we think that price is going to go, we think that company's price is about to go down. And so what they'll do is that it's complicated, but they basically, they borrow shares of that company and then pay it back. And the result is that the more the price dips, the more money they make. And it's a little counterintuitive, and honestly, I don't think it's good, because this can actually destroy a company if too many people do this at once. Well, there's a store called GameStop that sells video games that frankly is not, a lot of people really like this store, have shopped at it as kids. And a lot of these people are now in their 30s, and well, there's an internet, it's kind of a forum, it's called Reddit, and a bunch of people on Reddit got together and said, hey, we hear that a bunch of people are going to bet against GameStop stock, and the result is that it's going to cause the price to go down further. What if we all start investing in GameStop this week? And the result was frankly hysterical. The price went up and stayed up, and people were freaking out, worried, because suddenly this internet forum called Reddit had influenced a stock, and it was completely not what Wall Street expected. Now, things happening completely like Wall Street doesn't expect happens all the time, but it was just the unexpected angle. And I got to thinking about this, and I got to thinking about the whole treasures in heaven thing, and about how really, money by itself is not evil. It is the love of money, though, that tempts us to greed, and that is evil. And I found myself thinking back to when I was a lot younger. I found myself working for a company. Now, the owner, I want to be very clear, of this company was a very nice man. And he wanted very much to be kind to people and to be nice to his workers. And so he made sure that everybody was making good money. I mean, it wasn't spectacular, but it was several dollars above minimum wage when you started. And if you stayed on with the company for several years, you would get paid a lot more. And there was paid vacation time for folks. If you'd worked there for a year, you got a week's paid vacation. And that's pretty good. And he hired people who did not necessarily have college degrees for this, because he cared about people. And I got to work there, and I have to admit, I enjoyed my time there, at least at first. Oh, and best thing of all, it was the type of company rarely seen nowadays, where if you started out as just a regular worker, you could get promoted up to a supervisor position where you were doing real well, and you did not have to have a college degree. all you had to do is have a very thorough understanding of how the company worked and good management skills. It was wonderful. And the company was a pretty happy place. Well, then one day, the owner, the company was going through some growing pains, and some people came in who were consultants, and they advised the owner that he really needed to turn the company into a public company that had investors and was traded on the stock exchange. And in order, they said, to get to the point where they were traded on the stock exchange, they had to make a whole bunch of changes. Now, the result of this is that the owner got a whole bunch of new people working for him who were basically vice presidents of the company. And that's where it all kind of went wrong. These people were not interested in how the company worked. They would just occasionally come out of their offices and scream at people. They were not interested in the well-being of the workers. They started hiring people at minimum wage. And a lot of the people who had worked their way up to some pretty good high bonuses and high pay rates, they were mysteriously let go for very flimsy reasons. But in Tennessee, you can fire anybody for any reason. I was talking with somebody 2 weeks ago who'd been fired from his job because he got COVID. And I'm still mad about that. And I'm still mad about some of the stuff that happened at this company I worked at when I was young. Because what happened is that this company, it was still a job. We still had to work hard. But it went from being pretty nice to work for to, frankly, being hell. It was awful. And the result was that I had a friend of mine die. There was this lady who worked with me, who I would sit beside sometimes, who was pretty nice, but they scheduled her for 2 16-hour shifts in a row. And she didn't complain because she needed money. They weren't paying her very much. And she had a stroke and she died. And I still wonder if just her manager had just said to her, no, you can't work 2 16-hour shifts in a row, if that would have saved her. And the boss wouldn't have wanted that. The guy who owned the company, I know he wouldn't have wanted that. But you see, he was mostly shut up in his office now, and he was no longer coming down and working with the rest of us. And certainly the vice presidents that he had hired weren't coming in and working with the rest of us. Nothing changed after she died. Nothing. Where was these people's treasure? It wasn't with people. It wasn't with doing kind things. And we human beings are quite capable of making hell for ourselves. It used to be that promotions would happen within the company. Well, that was no longer true. Like most companies now, the company would hire in people from the outside. People who had degrees. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a degree. I value my degrees. And if I had a child that told me they wanted to go to get a master's degree in business, I'd be like, sure, go for it. But there are a lot of people who get business degrees who've never worked a job. And who then come in and think that they know how people work. And somehow it all goes wrong. And Jesus said, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroy, but where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Now, there are many good businesses out there and many good organizations, but there's also a lot of temptations. And after I left that company, I said, never again am I going to work for a company that treats its workers this badly. And I never have. You know, one of the things I personally would like to tell everybody who's a manager or a boss is that if you believe that your workers will lie and steal, that soon enough, all of your workers will lie and steal. Here's why. There are a lot of people who like to take pride in their jobs, who like to take pride in what they're doing. And there's nothing more joyous to me personally than working a job in which I feel like I've done some good. Whether that's hotel work, whether that's making something, whether that's even crafting a sermon or something like that. I enjoy that. But if your manager believes that everybody will lie and steal and doesn't encourage everybody to do a good job, then the result is that the people who have pride in their job will leave that company and only the thieves will stay. And the boss will be sitting there wondering why their business went wrong. Of course, every bit of this gets solved if all the bosses spend at least one day a month working the most basic job in the company. Then suddenly everything gets righted. And I wonder what would have happened in that old company I worked for if, after the lady died, if all those vice presidents had come down to the floor and started maybe every once in a while sitting with the rest of us. If they'd stored their treasures in heaven instead of just being concerned with the bottom line. And let's be clear, the church is somewhat at fault for this. Now, not our church, okay? But the fact is that there's a lot of churches out there that basically give permission for this sort of behavior. They act like they're country clubs. You know, you're in our club, you're okay. And that's not necessarily true. You can create hell or you can create heaven, depending on how much attention you pay and how much you care about people. Jesus said to us regarding all of this, regarding everything really, therefore I say to you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air, for they neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? Which of you by worrying can add 1 cubit to his stature? Yeah, money is not bad. Owning a business. I've owned a business. Me and my husband owned a used bookstore. We loved it. But life is more than money making. Life is more than food and clothing. Living a life worth living is filled with caring and kindness and not locking yourself behind a closed door where you don't know what's going on. Because behind a closed door, you assume everything is fine. But you don't know. And it's funny how much happier and richer the owners that actually, of businesses that care about their workers, that they are. Yes, there are some people who steal and cheat and lie, but funny thing is, sometimes you care about them and they turn themselves around. Following Jesus means living differently, living better. And just to kind of give you an idea of Jesus' management style, he's our king, but he wasn't born in a palace. He spent time walking from town to town. He complained once he had no place to lay his head. As our king, he got to know us not by summoning us to his palace, though we all hoped to have that happen, but he walked with us on our streets. He drank from our fountains and wells, and he ate food with us, human beings. And if we really would be like Jesus, that's what we need to do. And I'm here to tell you that when you understand, if you have people working for you, then you need to do the same. Care for them. Eat and drink with them. Doesn't have to mean you have to spend every minute of the day with them. Doesn't mean you even have to like them. But understand what they go through. Because that's what Jesus did. My friends, this sermon today, it came into my heart. I don't know who it's for, but I pray that whoever it's for, that you will hear it, and that I'm speaking with the best of intentions here. It is not easy to be like Jesus. It is not easy at all. You all, don't worry too much, and be at peace. Because in following Jesus, it can be hard sometimes, but it is a better way.